We are in Racket Lake, New York State, in the company of Eugenia. Eugenia, could you tell us your full name, please, and why you're in Racket Lake today?
I'm Eugenia Almand.
Eugenia Almand.
Yes. And we're here at Racket Lake for a seminar of the Institute on World Problems. The seminar is intended to both introduce or give a greater understanding of the Earth Constitution, that is a constitution for the Federation of Earth, and to the legislative program of a provisional world parliament. So some of the people here have been with this longer than I have, but others are fairly new to it, and we're all reviewing or having introduction to the Earth Constitution and the Provisional World Parliament.
Maybe you could tell us the main purpose of all of this.
We would like to build self-government at a worldwide level. When we say self-government, I am meaning a process of participatory democracy at a worldwide level in which people are protected from one another. People cannot hurt one another. And so we have in the world today numerous world problems that no individual and no corporation, no national government or international agency can address these world problems. They're intractable, unfixable. However, if human beings really put their mind to this, not merely think that it is someone else's problem, but this is a problem of each of us as human beings, and we put our mind to this, then can we discover a solution through, or that is, discover what are these world problems? If we govern ourselves and work together, really together, and we put our mind, our whole heart, to understanding the problems of our world, then through that, maybe something new will come.
I was listening before. You were talking a lot about one of the priorities is environment, and you were talking about what's happening to certain oceans or sea. Could you please tell us what one of the major problems is?
Okay. I'm not an environmental expert. I'm a human being with different aspects to my life. But I can, from what I have read, there are a great number of problems, for instance, the environment of the oceans. It has been said and posted variously that there's 90% of the fish are gone from the fisheries. That there are vast tracts of ocean that are dead, right? Septic, or where there are no fish and no creatures, except maybe some microbes and jellyfish or something. Dead sections of the ocean. Then we're familiar with that apparently there's this process of acidification of the oceans in which since the CO2 is increased in the air, it begins dissolving into the oceans in greater and greater quantities. The ocean gets acid, and the fish can't breathe. The creatures can't live. And there's also the problem when the water warms, that the water can carry much less oxygen when it's warm. So these are real problems, and it may be out 2,000 miles in the middle of the ocean, but it affects each of us as human beings because our lives depend on the life of the ocean.
So what are you planning to do in order to improve it?
Well, we are sensing that we have to be aware of the problems, and I would want to find out if there can be an awareness which is whole. That is, not just one problem, but the whole of human problems. And if a human being can sense all of these problems that we have in a glance, right? In a single whole perception of what is happening. Can we do that? So it's not merely one isolated problem. The physicists are saying that everything is connected to everything else. So,
no, but what what I found very interesting here is that you've underlined so many problems that most people don't know, like what you just said about what's happening with the ocean. Everybody seems to know there's pollution, but they don't know to what extreme. You are also talking about these big boats. Perhaps you should underline what you meant by the pollution of these big boats and what's happening with them.
there are big boats in the oceans. All of the boats go through a cycle, a sort of a life cycle of the boat. Right? Boat may last 30 years or 40 years or 100 years. But typically what will happen is there will be a degradation of the hull over a course of ever how many years. There's rust in this spot and that spot. And there are technicians that assess the strength of the hull and the integrity of the hull. And they can project more or less, or they can understand more or less when the integrity is becoming compromised and it makes more sense to get a new boat. The old way of approaching this problem was that the company that is owning, operating the boat would simply send it off to a third world country, beach the boat, and order a new boat, because they've computed the costs of a new boat into their projections, but they haven't computed in the cost of decommissioning the boat without releasing the toxins and pollution into the environment. So what we're saying is that since these companies have not been able or have neglected to, whatever it is, to compute these costs into the cycle of the life of the ship, that the people of the world need to consider and internalize the costs. Right? Some of those costs may be taken up by the owners, the companies that operate the ships. But it's not reasonable to just say flatly, okay, the company takes over all of that and leave it at that, because if we do that, the costs are so extreme that any one company that is trying to abide by some voluntary program, right, of decommissioning properly, they're going to be at an economic disadvantage to the companies that quietly in the night put the boat on the beach and hire some people to take it apart. Right?
Doesn't the UN do anything about that?
I don't know what the UN has done about that. We see that this process has been continuing, and that there are the people that are doing the work, they don't have adequate compensation, but still the boats have to go through a decommissioning process. So whose responsibility is it? Huh?
The companies, obviously.
Well, some people will say the companies, obviously. Huh? And the companies have not counted that in their costs, because none of the other companies are counting it into the costs. And the international conventions regarding this are voluntary conventions. Typically, there are or can be politically selectively enforced. Right? So it becomes political. So what we're saying is that there needs to be the companies that are doing the decommissions, that are decommissioning their ship. They do have to take responsibility, but also the people of the world have to also take a responsibility, and there have to be contracts with the companies that are decommissioning the ships, so that adequate compensation is there. So that the toxins are not released. There are standards for the decommissioning of ships, and so that the costs of, say, protective equipment for the workers is available. Right? That the workers have adequate training, so that they're not getting exposed to things because of ignorance. And we have to cover the costs. This is a role for people, for the people of Earth have to cover this cost.
So the companies make the money and we cover the cost.
It's
a bit like that.
It's not entirely like that, because the company has to be responsible.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we have to enable the company to be responsible.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Education.
I have typically, when people have asked for my political perspective, I have to point out that in many respects, there are different ways that people make classifications this way, but I would like for the people that are making use of whatever it is, they pay for it. And the companies are making use of the ships. And part of the process is for the companies that are operating the ships to cover the costs of decommissions. But it has to be done across the board, not just selectively on a political basis. That's saying, not just selectively on a political level, the ships of one country at a time, or the ships of one company at a time, right?
Nice.
There has to be a process where we coordinate ourselves and take care of these responsibilities in a whole sense, so that it's not political. And then the cost, it's neither entirely the people of the earth nor entirely the companies, but there's a process by which the companies and the people of the earth come together and pay for the costs, so that there's justice, there's environmental justice, and there's justice for everyone in the process. And Earth Federation can do this.
What's the level today of the I think the CO2 up in the air? I think it's reached a high level like never before.
Well, I'm not an expert. I have heard that it is reaching, or has reached, 400 parts per million. Now, they have monitoring stations, and there's slight variations in the amounts that are measured in the monitoring stations, but it tends to be similar. And 400 parts per million, I think perhaps has been in the atmosphere before in geological history, but not in a long time.
You're talking about hundreds, if not thousands of years, or?
Well, I'm not a paleontologist.
Okay.
I'm not a climatologist, but things that I've read in Science Journal and Nature, these are peer-reviewed journals. There are peer-reviewed journals that explain a cycle of the current epoch, or of the, not epoch, but of the there are different geological ages. And for the past 5 million years, we've been going through a cycle of glacial cycles. The Earth has gone through glacial cycles. And when we say glacial cycles, that doesn't mean the entire Earth is covered with glaciers. There are deserts in parts, but there's a predominance of glaciers in the temperate regions and in the Arctic regions and Antarctic regions. And at the beginning of these cycles, the beginning of the glacial portion of the cycle, the CO2 goes up abruptly, the sea levels rise, then the sea levels drop, and the ice forms on the polar caps. Okay? So I don't know the details of this. And I'm not saying that we're approaching an ice age. We used to say that it looked that way, that we're probably approaching an ice age, but we don't know because the CO2 has gone up so abruptly that we think that it has surpassed the rate of increase of CO2 of past periods of worldwide glaciation, or almost, large-scale glaciation across the world.
So the world government's objective will be to be able to create norms and tools in order to be able to prevent all of that.
We want to be able to mitigate damage and, when possible, repair damage and prevent damage.
A lot of work to be done.
Apparently so.
Yeah. Anyway, I wish you the best of luck in your endeavor, and hopefully it'll happen sooner than later, because we want to be able to make sure that our future generation will have a beautiful world to live in.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
So I don't know if there's anything you would like to add.
Well, we're all in this together. We're all human beings together on this earth. And it's taking our life, our ability to build, and our responsibility and our right to do what we can to protect Earth and to reduce what damage takes place in our day-to-day activities. And also for there to be awareness when there is damage being done on a large scale. We have to be sensitive to it and respond well. So can we do that together?
Well, let's all jump in the boat and do it.
We govern ourselves together on this earth.
That's right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And again, the best of luck.
Thank you very much.